It's really bedtime. It's time for me to go to bed. I got one more day left in the work week. One more, just Friday. I'm off Saturday and Sunday. So I don't care if I'm a little sleepy. Because the day will probably end a little sooner anyway, and I'll be able to take me a nap. I got my Captain Crunch socks on. Brittany gave me them. Y'all need to know I had Captain Crunch socks. Y'all need to know that. Let's see if I can. I think if I pull it, there we go. That gets it near about level. If you want to fix a problem, you have to take on responsibility for the problem. And a lot of times when you see a problem and you start to plan and start to act to fix the problem, people will say, you can't control what happens. Or they'll say, you're just one person. But the people who do great things are always just one person. If you really, really, really want something, you really, really have a lot of force of will to obtain it, you just naturally come in contact with people that are on the same purpose with the same goals. Help is out there, you just ain't met them yet. But when you start moving in that direction, you meet them. They show up. I wonder if maybe I shouldn't do this on camera because it might be a negative influence for someone else. But I guess I kind of got a problem. But hey, everybody. So I was saying, if you want to solve problems, you got to take responsibility for them. I was saying that a lot of times when you got to fix something, people will tell you can't do it, or it's just, people will magnify problems instead of solutions, and they'll come up with everything that could go wrong. But normally you can do a lot more than other people believe you can do. Other people don't know your capabilities, and other people don't know your force of will. If you feel very strongly about something, you probably know something more about it than the people who don't feel very strongly about it. And if you feel motivated to do something about it, you might be the exact person that is the kind of person that can do something about it and will do something about it. So don't let other people live your life. Don't let other people tell you what you can and can't do. I'm not saying be reckless and rebellious for no reason, but I'm just saying a lot of times the things that you know, the things that you are meant to do, you're going to know it, and when other people aren't going to know it. And then if someone has failed at something, a lot of times they'll try to discourage other people from succeeding at it. But normally when someone succeeds at it, it's because they fell at it several times while they're figuring it out. And if it's nothing else, it's something to keep you busy all your days and all this time. I really wish that I could just see all the past like a movie and see the future. It's sort of a shame that we have such short lives. Imagine if you could. Now, I hear people say they wouldn't want to live 1,000 years, but I don't know why they wouldn't. But imagine if you could plan and plant whole forests, watch trees grow up to be 100 years old. If you could live like 10,000 years, you could be like, I'm an oak tree breeder. You know, I don't think we would just run out of things to do and be bored if we had long lives. We would be able to have much bigger projects. I would anyway. But then there's other people that they desperately want to live forever, and they would pay a price I wouldn't pay for it. Like I've known two different people, a man and a woman, that say that they would become a vampire. I would never lose my humanity and become a monster to live forever. I'm not about to be drinking people's blood so I can live longer. I'll accept the short life when it comes to that. But if somebody's just like, here's you a free 1,000 years, I'd take it. You know, can you say, is it Malachi Rossman? You better hope you don't have any ghosts in that house. Keith claims that he saw one. It might cause some problems in his marriage. He was sleeping out there in his semi truck in the cab because he said he saw a naked old man ghost. But I ain't afraid of no ghost. As an American, we were given propaganda to be ready to face any ghost. Scooby-Doo has assured me that it is a man in a mask, and I'm not worried about it. You can't imagine it? I can. 1,000 years, you could befriend a lot of tortoises. But me, I like to grow trees. So to live thousands of years, you could grow several different trees. You could just make you a new variety of citrus fruit. You could domesticate a wild animal because you could breed them enough generations to do it. You could see your children's children and pass knowledge to them. You could do so many things with 1,000 years of life that you can't do with 100 years. I just can't imagine. I don't think I would run out of stuff. Like, you'd still have your health, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying like at 100, you're aged to 100 for 1,000 years. But like, if you could still do things, why not live 1,000 years? You'd have time to build a pyramid probably or something. I would do it. But I'm not like, it ain't like I ain't gotta, like, I'm okay. Like, I know I'm gonna die one day. Everybody's gotta die someday, and I'm okay with, not expecting to live 1,000 years. But I'm too excited to see what's on the other side. Or just go to sleep and never wake up. I'm good with either. I am curious about the other side. And I imagine there's a lot of work to do on the other side as well. But once you live here, what we won't always be here, but the consequences of what we do here will be here. There's a chain of cause and effect. It's like, so my olive trees will outlive me. The olive trees that I've planted, I mean, I don't know the future for sure. I don't know if a volcano will explode up under them or something one day, but probably. I mean, it's possible that thousands of years after I'm dead, animal like birds might be eating olives off of my trees. People might be eating the olives. So I don't know. Like, you read like Adam. So I think it said that he lived 960 years. Noah like 500 years. I don't know if it's 300 before the flood, 500 after, 500 before three. He lived around 900 years, and then right after the flood, everyone's like 120 or less. I think there might have been one person a little bit more than 120. Did Ishmael live 130 or something? I don't remember. Oh, thank you. I saw these videos about Chinumpas where there were these floating gardens the Aztecs built on a lake, and they would anchor them with willow trees. And so the water, they would basically make like a basket out of reeds and stuff and put soil on it. And you never had to water it. The water's just coming from up underneath in the pond. And, ponds are going to have nitrates in them anyway to fertilize, and the fish is going to fertilize. And I was thinking about building a Chinoopa in my pond, But I think it would be easier to just dig a pond for that than for me to try to. I don't know. I think it's a cool idea. I would like to do that. I wanted to put lotus flowers and water lilies in the pond for my honeybees because I was thinking that'd be great. They'd have like a perpetual source of nectar. But then fire ants, believe it or not, completely consumed them. Fire ants went to these floating flowers and just ate them, ate every bit of them. I couldn't figure out what was eating them. At first, I thought, man, and I also think one of them was being ate by a turtle. So I guess I can only like in the high ponds on the hill that I've dug, I could probably put them in there. But in the low pond in the woods out there, that's in that same valley as the swamp, the wildlife is just gonna eat them. I'm trying to filter the water and get the water cleaner for them. I put some water. I put some mussels in there. Every plant I try to put in there for them, they just eat it all before it can get established. So it's just algae in there for oxygen, I guess. Maybe if we lived in a slower time with a cleaner earth, I'd be open to living 1,000. Well, I mean, we could plant them trees. Earth has gotten cleaner in a way. We've been able to make it more energy cleaner. Like and there's been a lot of negative side effects of plastics and microplastics. We got to figure that out. But with petroleum, like if you was to say burn wood instead or coal instead or almost anything instead, or when they were burning peat and manure instead, there was so much more pollution generated per energy produced. So we really kind of cleaned things up. But not about like there's too much garbage being dumped in the ocean. And America has a lot of nets to catch the garbage before it gets into the ocean. But a lot of Southeast Asia doesn't. And there's a lot of trash being dumped in the ocean. But there's a lot of trash being dumped in our food in the USA. Like in the processed foods. Used to you could feed, not that you should, I don't guess, but you could feed a lot of the peanut butter snacks and stuff to dogs, no problem. But now they got certain artificial sweeteners in peanut butter that'll straight up kill a dog. I'm thinking we shouldn't be eating that either. I'm not. And there's so many like very corrupted, like at the DNA level, they're manipulating food. Even inserting animal genes in plants, human genes in tomatoes, saying it helps with mineral absorption. That's why I just started growing. That's why I started my own garden and started having chickens and started getting animals. I can't trust the food. I got to make my own food. I don't know what they're trying to feed me. We've probably progressed as a material culture, but spiritually we've regressed. And also, there's not the same value of life or dignity for human life, or just like it's really insane how many babies are aborted, and it's really crazy how so many people are willing to spend the futures of their children through debt. They say, well, like I mean, they don't have the money for the standard of living they want, but they're like, let's just print up money and pass that debt on to our children and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren. And that's a weird thing that's happened. It's like the culture has become suicidal because for like ever, they always tried to make things better for the next generation. And then they were just like, all for me. Let's take no thought of the future, all for now. I think the nuclear age did some of that, where people at the time were thinking, any day we're going to get nuked and all die. So let's just live for today, not the future. And it made a type of culture shift in America from that. And there's a lot of other things, other negative things that compounded to get us where we are today. And a lot of it they absolutely attacked respecting fathers. And I think that was a foreign attack on our country. What the media did there, what a foreign nation did there. I think that was war was waged on us without us being aware it was even going on. And virtually all entertainment is propaganda. And most of it's meant to shift the culture in a way that's negative or it's self-harming, to cause disunity in family, disunity in neighborhoods, it can be just, and it's, they want families weaker and individuals weaker because they really just want us to be almost like robots. They're not really looking out to the spiritual health of the people. They're just managing a tax farm. And they done sold us out a long time ago. They want people who have, like, it's different countries have different bills of rights, and different people and different cultures believe they have different rights. But it's all forced at the edge of a sword. At the end of the day, it's all decided by force. People argue about things, fight about them, people win and lose. And there's a silent force upon us that we don't feel. Like if you've ever seen like a major disaster happen or a riot happen where a mob gets caught up in this emotion and they almost lose their individuality and they all act in one in like this madness because, like, I'm talking about with anarchy, where there's no fear of being arrested, there's no sense that there's any violence. What I'm saying, there's a peace where people just feel a peace and they don't realize that the reason they feel that peace is there's a hierarchy of organized violence that's putting a certain vibe out there for people to check themselves. And people at the top have certain values that they force upon the populace, and the populace has certain values that they force upon one another. And so people in America feel that they are entitled to a lot of freedoms that in other countries they don't. And so it makes us kind of hard to work with because we feel that we have freedom of thought, freedom of speech, that we should be able to have arms, weapons, that we should be able to not have troops quartered in our homes, that people should have warrants to search through our papers. And there's a lot of people in other parts of the world that are just, they're not used to that at all. They're used to police being able to just come up in their house and look through other stuff. They're used to not being able to have any gun rights or being told what to say or not say. And so they'd rather replace us with them. We're just, we're a troublesome lot because we just like liberty too much. And it's hard to just, once people have that as a tradition, Machiavelli said that if you take a city who's got a tradition of liberty, you've got to take those people out and put different people in there or completely destroy them or something because they're always going to be revolting. They're always going to feel, that they're entitled to those things. And I think it's been by design to put it in our minds that we're overpopulated. This below replacement rate thing is done on purpose. And they say it's just an effect of becoming a wealthy nation or a developed nation. But you don't see that in Israel. There they have a high standard of living and they have a high birth rate of something like 8. But they're not having a psychological warfare put on them continuously. They're not having homosexuality forced on them. They're not having abortion forced on them. They're not having ethnic guilt forced on them. They're not constantly being told that they should be ashamed of their past. They're not constantly being told they're like the worst people in the world. They're not constantly having their history rewrote where all the people in their history was some other people. I don't really know how it happened but I didn't live there. So what I'm told about the era might not be the way it was. But I don't really see how did they go from having such a high standard of living, having united families, having high birth rates, and being wealthy, and just a very scientific, progressive culture. How did they go from that and then go into the 60s and 70s and 80s? Like, how did that happen? And most of all the movies that were made by Hollywood was pushing adultery, pushing this idea that pushing divorce acceptance, pushing disrespecting the father in the home, pushing the children being disrespectful to the parents. Um, it's just, and I told, I believe that pornography is a weapon. It's a weapon to destroy. It destroys. It's what it's for. And the reason I believe this is because that you said, I know that maybe this isn't the best metaphor, but I'm just going to talk about. I'm going to talk about chimpanzees and apes as an example for a second. Then I'm going to go back to humans. But you'll have somebody who's a high status gorilla. He's the alpha gorilla, and he mates with all the females. And the other males, they see him mating with those other females, but they're not allowed to. They're not able to. And in their mind, they're beta. They're not alpha. They're submitted. They're not. They're not feeling dominant. They're not feeling empowered. And when someone watches porn, they're not the one having sex. They're watching, or if a man's watching porn, he's watching another man have sex with the woman he desires, not him. And then because of his attraction to the woman, he's getting sexually aroused. So he's getting sexually aroused by being beta, not by getting sex, but by watching someone else. It's like putting in his mind to be a cuck. It's putting in his mind to be emasculated. It's putting in his mind to be submitted. It's demoralizing him. And so porn is a weapon that the Jews used to make a nation paralyzed to be able to defend themselves and fight back. It's a weapon. It's a weapon to destroy families. It's a weapon to destroy the relations between men and women. And it's a weapon to make a man so weak in his mind that he can never resist the government because he's been made a loser. And he's hardwiring his sexuality to be attached to not reproducing, but getting off on someone else reproducing that's not him. And I don't think that like a lot of things that are damaging, if they don't kill you right away or they don't destroy you right away, you might not notice that they're damaging or they're hurting you. Like I smoked for a long time before my lungs had any issues, but it was hurting me the whole time. And I think that pretty much all American entertainment is poison. And it's meant to destroy the culture that made America great. It's been subversive from the beginning. There's about a 50 square mile area that's part in Ukraine and part in Russia where all the Jewish families that made Hollywood come from. And I believe it was an organized conspiracy, and they meant to come to America with its morals and traditions and completely destroy it. And that's why there's a rabbi that owns Pornhub. That's why the Jews own all the porn. And I had a lot of, not a lot, but there were friends of mine I had that they wanted to try to defend porn. And I was just like, I explained it the way I just explained it to y'all. Like, and a lot of them, they saw it different. They give it up. And I think it's if you're a man or something and you have some kind of a problem with that, I think if you were to think about what I'm saying, it would help you quit it. And it also help you get with somebody because you would have a drive to go get with somebody. You wouldn't be, exhausting your drive. That drive is there to push you to reproduce, to be with somebody, to bond with somebody. It's not there to just, So I don't know how I got onto that. But very violent, integrating. I agree. And it's like the thing is that it's like if you was to do cocaine or something where eventually that little bit is not enough, so you do more and more and more. And I think that's the nature of porn, to where they go for more and more of a thrill and more into perversion. And so, yeah, I do think it is. I agree that it is violent and degrading. It might start off less violent, but it'll trend to. It just, and a lot of serial killers were porn addicts. But here's another thing about a lot of serial killers that the media just doesn't touch on, and I don't know why they don't. A lot of these serial killers are religiously motivated, and they are doing sacrifices to, like, they believe in, like, they have their own gods or demons or devils that they're worshiping, and they normally talk a lot about it, but the media doesn't show that part. And that a lot of these are like satanic and devil worshiping, like human sacrifices, or they're trying to believing in some spiritual way that they gain their powers by killing and eating them and things like this. And the media just never really like mentioned a lot about the serial killers, like the whole high profile serial killers. They eventually mentioned that they all had porn addiction in common, but they didn't mention about their religion. They just sort of made it out that these people are just compulsively killing without religious motivation. Or they didn't say or imply that, but they just left that information out. But I'm not a man, so I don't know about that. There's a lot of people that say the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between, what you imagine, what you see on TV, or what you hear. But I'm gonna get back to television and a lot of the programming on television. Television isn't just showing you an image; it's showing you this animation at a certain frame rate, at a certain frequency, at a certain flicker rate. That's designed to put your brain in a different state. And there's like, it's not fresh on my mind right now, so I'm probably not gonna be 100% accurate on that. But look up about theta, the theta state, the alpha state. There's different. I don't. It puts your brain in a certain state to where it's kind of like it's hypnotized, and it makes it more programmable. And the whole logic and reasoning and processing part of your brain, it just skips past that. Which story does that anyway? You don't even need TV. If you take and make something into a story, the brain, for the sake of the story, suspends like like let's say you tell the story about the three little pigs, right? Well, you couldn't hear the story if you were like, wait a minute, wolves don't talk, pigs don't talk. So for the sake of the story, you just sort of relax the rules of what is logical, what is reality, and that part of the brain just kind of like it's suspended for the sake of the story. And so you're able to really bypass a lot of the resistance to new ideas through telling a story. The human brain is wired to be that way, so we can communicate large amounts of information through stories, through myths. It's how we didn't always have a written word, and even when we did have a written word, we always had the oral tradition and the oral word too. And so TV, it's using a certain flicker rate and flash rate to put your brain in a more programmable state. And then at the same time, it's using the story mode, the story method to put those ideas in your head. And like, there's little things like in an old X Files episode, you'll see the FBI violating the Constitution, and that's to condition the people to get used to it. And you'll see them like little like people just very clumsy with guns on TV. Like, oh, they're dangerous. You'll just accidentally kill anybody beside you. And this is propaganda that they put in people watch it because of the entertainment, but it's there to control the people, and it always has been. Theater, gladiatorial matches, chariot races. The ruling classes always used entertainment as propaganda and to control the masses and to influence the masses. Exactly. So I'll make that. Yeah, and I mean, sex is a very different thing with someone that you're committed to forever that you love than just pleasure chasing. And in the end, that is, just chasing pleasure for pleasure's sake, without it being aligned to any kind of purpose or anything. It it uh, it eventually turns to pain. It eventually loses its. Uh, I think that if you want to not be happy, always try to be happy. Always have the mindset that what makes me, because it puts you in a selfish mind state and gets you constantly focused on yourself. It's like, what makes me happy? What's this? It's just. But if you live to make positive changes in the world, and you're not even really thinking about happiness, you'll have more happiness and more peace than if you're making your objective happiness. I think your objective is to do good in the world and to be good. That not to feel good. You know, pain and pleasure are reward and punishment mechanisms to incentivize certain behaviors. And the good life is a balance between them. It's not just like trying to. You cannot be in a constant state of happiness or a constant state of pleasure, and that's what a lot of humans chase. That's what a lot of we're always trying to. We're always trying to like medicate pain with pleasure, or we're always trying to stay in a constant state of pleasure, and we're looking for all kind of different ways to do that. But a life of purpose is better than a life of hedonism for sure. And different people value different things, but and being your authentic self, like not betraying yourself, being true to yourself. And I'm not saying self worship or be all about yourself, but what I'm saying is you'll be happier to be real than to be fake. You'll be happier to do what you really are meant to do than what someone else has got you doing. And also, a lot of your quality of life depends on the relationships you have with people in your life. So, and part of that is determined by your own behavior and character. Because you got to decide. You got to decide. You decide who your friends are. People have become so weak to experience. The good life is distortions around attraction. What is attractive? No one wants to get uncomfortable. Yeah, and pain is one of the greatest developers and teachers. The mind's sharper under pain than under pleasure. There's certain, and I think to be really at peace and to be really happy, you're gonna have to accept that life is its ups and downs and its pains and pleasures. And I think that people who have this expectation to be in a constant state of pleasure or happy, that's why they get so depressed. They're just not. If you look outside in nature, everything's eating everything, but everything's alive. But this is not a world for the weak, really. You do have to. No one wants to get uncomfortable. You do have to get uncomfortable to develop. Like if you're learning a new skill or you're learning something that is at a point there's going to be kind of some resistance where there's some difficulty where you're having to actually like think to try to figure something out. There's going to be some uncomfortable stuff there. There's going to be some uncomfortable stuff about uh, taking personal accountability for things in your life. There's going to be some uncomfortableness around exercising. There's going to be some uncomfortableness around diet. There's going to be some uncomfortableness around the first time you water ski or the first time you do a new job or something. So but like if you want something, there's all kind of obstacles and uncomfortable stuff along the way. And so it's good to develop an attitude to where you embrace challenges and difficulties and things that are uncomfortable. And if you really like, I'm not going to go. I've got a lot of different people in my family and different people that watch my channel, so I'm not going to name names or go into specifics. But when I was a child, I had a lot of lies told to me. And it made me really, really, really love the truth and, really value truth. And so it gave me a willingness to be uncomfortable about things in pursuit of the truth. And so there's a lot of truths that a lot of people will never, they'll never know those truths because they're not willing to get uncomfortable to know those truths. And there'll always be someone with a lot of comforting lies, that for where you'd be face to face with the truth, there'll be hundreds of alternatives offered. For every truth, there's countless lies. There's what is, and there's all the lies you could tell about it. Sometimes you can find the truth by the lies, because all the lies are doing the same thing, trying to point away from the truth and contradicting each other. But the truth can never be proven a lie. And so that's why there's a lot of money put into propagandas and lies. But the truth is always free to tell the truth. I mean, there's consequences, there's uncomfortableness, there's things people could do to you. You could be ostracized, you could be tortured and killed. I mean, but you can always say the truth. You have to have courage. And so the truth will always be out there for the people who want it. The truth will always be the supreme authority. The truth cannot be defeated. And the truth may be buried for a long time, but it will grow. Like seed planted, it will grow. It will make fruit and more seed. The truth will be there. I did too. I know a lot of when I was in high school, because I'm the oldest of 7 brothers. So I had other brothers that were in middle school, and their friends in middle school, a lot of their parents were just putting them on like Prozac while they're in and a lot of teenagers go through a period of depression just naturally as they develop. A lot of some people theorize that depressed people, like, it can backfire if you become suicidal, but depressed people do not engage in as much risky behavior. And teenagers tend to not analyze risk as well and have a lot of urges and primal urges and stuff. And that kind of nature's way of keeping them from winding up dead, doing something dumb or something with all the raging hormones and stuff is to kind of depress them a little bit temporarily, and then they grow out of it. So there's a lot of people that grow up that somewhere in middle school or high school they'll go through a blues period of like a down period of and then they come out of it. And so for no good reason that I can think, they said, okay, we got all these antidepressant medicines that have a side effect of suicidal tendencies and school shootings. Let's hand these out to everybody that says they're sad. And if they're not sad, let's just have them talk about their problems continuously until they are. Like, I don't really know what. I did read a plan to take over the world where they talked about replacing foods and medicines with poisons. And I think I'm seeing it happen. And then there's also a lot of sodium fluoride mixed in with a lot of the antidepressant drugs. Are your brothers is I'll say yes. I'll say we each all have our strengths and weaknesses. Like me, I will remember a lot of what I read, and I can read pretty fast. but I'm not as good at all at computer programming or math as my brother Josh. But I'm better at farming and things like that. And then I'd say we all have our strengths and weaknesses. But I would say that my brothers are all. I would say they're smart. I say both of my parents are smart in different ways. My daddy has certain strengths and weaknesses, and so does my mama. And I see both of my parents and my brothers, and and like when me, Josh, and Luke all lived in this house. Anything with the computers, Josh would fix. Anything with the plumbing, Luke would fix, and anything with the electricity, I would fix. And a lot of times, people would come to me asking about computers, and I'd say, "Well, go to Josh." And I didn't really have to know about it because Josh would fix it. And then Adam, though, he's living in Dawsonville, and he's like a firefighter and a paramedic, and I think he was in the SWAT team at some point and learning Krav Maga, and I don't know really where he's working right now. Is your family religious? Yes, my mama named us all from the Bible: Paul, Josh, Adam, Luke, Jacob, Noah, and except my sister Gracie. And actually, when let's see, when I'm trying to think of, I'm just not gonna say the ages because I don't want to say something that's not true, and I don't remember exactly when. But when I was in elementary school, I'm thinking somewhere around probably the third grade. It might have been before then. My parents would me and my brother Josh. I don't think Adam. I think Adam was just a baby then. They would tell us to, go read our Bible and then get ready for bed and everything. And then they would ask us what we had read in the Bible and what we had learned from it and everything. And so I was reading the Bible from cover to cover, and I finished up the New Testament in middle school. But it's because I would read from Genesis. I'd start to read from Genesis to Revelation, and I'd get to maybe Chronicles or Kings, and then quit reading the Bible for a while. And I start back at the beginning of Genesis and read back. So I read the books of Moses several times over. And I read the Old Testament probably 3 times. I've read the New Testament probably around 5 times. And I went to school to be a preacher when I was in high school on Thursday, and was it Tuesday and Thursday nights or evenings, I don't know if it was like 6 to 9 or something like that. I went to the dean is Don Allen, and they've changed the name of the church. At the time, they had a private school called War Hill Christian Academy, and the church was called War Hill Christian Fellowship. But I don't remember the name of the Bible college. And but I went there, but I never become a preacher. I went to that's what I was. I guess I would be a preacher in middle school and high school in the public schools. And but let's see. But I really I had a lot of questions. I started hmm, there were in a way, it was like I was kind of like, I guess I was sort of like kind of, I didn't see it at the time, but I guess I was kind of like bratty and entitled to where I felt that God should kind of be like a genie. And why wasn't he giving me what I wanted? And I was in love with this girl, and why wasn't I we able, and why did my uncle die, and my other uncle die, and my friends die, and the drunk driver, and my great, like, why did all these people die at the same time, like from me from 19 to 20? Why wasn't things going my way? Why wasn't my life easy? Why wasn't, I don't know. I just, why did God have to be told he was good all the time when he was perfect? Why is it okay for God to burn people in hell for all of eternity? Why does this Bible verse and that Bible, how does a man have to be crucified for someone to be forgiven? Why can't he just forgive us? Why? You're not supposed to question that. You're not supposed to ask this. You're not supposed to ask that. And then also I did encounter a lot of things that, I, some of the things, if I was to say, it would just automatically, people would be like, well, maybe you're crazy. But I've heard things and I've seen things that it's like I either, I, at some times, I think maybe I was a little crazy. At other times, I think maybe it is real. And then at other times, I think maybe it's all just bullshit. And oh man, like, my parents and my girlfriend all see my live and hear me say that, But I just, there was a time where I was 100% confident it was all true. So I wanted to convert everybody. But then when I wasn't 100% sure that it was true, I wasn't in such a hurry to go convert everybody. I think is like, because I've had people ask me a lot and I haven't really, like, I guess that's kind of the best way to explain it. So then I went to questioning. I read the Quran. I looked at the other religions too. Hindu. I'm just gonna say I just am not impressed with anything out the East. I mean, I don't want to be a hater, but or whatever. I mean, maybe Taoism a little bit is okay, but I was just not the whole everything is nothing, nothing is everything, everything's an illusion, we're actually God. I just thought it was all bullshit. I just sort of hate all the philosophy out of India and a lot of this stuff out of China, of all this sort of commie, goobly goop, be the board shit. And I like the Stoics, the Stoic philosophers, because I thought it was practical, like, how to steer your mind and control your emotions and be practical and realistic about the situation you're in. I thought that Stoicism offered a lot of practical advice. I liked it. And I looked at Nietzsche, and I read a lot of Nietzsche. I read Nietzsche's the genealogy of morality. And when I began to read the genealogy of morality, and he began to talk about where Israel was in different phases of their history, and he began to talk about how their basically their view on God and how that changed over time based on whether they were in a position of power or weakness. It seemed to make, like, I don't want to, like, it's easy to interpret the things he says in so many different ways, and so many people interpret it in so many different ways, and I don't want to try to, like, sum it all up or whatever. And it's not like he's got like a unified, streamlined, concise uh, worldview where it all fits together. He's kind of all over the place talking about all kind of different things, and it's sometimes contradicting things he said. Because you also got to look at where Nietzsche has very different attitudes about women after he's rejected by one, than before. So but so one of the things that he talks about is he talks about that morality there's basically two main types of morality. master morality and slave morality, and he talks about the power dynamics that have always pretty much been in the world, where you have you have type of a warrior type class of people that honor bravery and dominance and pride of competence and things like that. But then you have the slave morality that's more about compassion and equality, and that the masters are bad because they're prideful, that you should be humble. And so you go from Israel being released from slavery, being very power hungry, going and enslaving others and killing others and making a nation state. And their God's all about power, wealth. I'll give you milk and honey. I'll give you the fat of the land. Your enemies will flee from you. Kill their women, children, and everything. It's dominating. It's the nation is justified to go around and go to conquer. And it's very different when you get to the New Testament, where they're occupied by the Romans, and they can try to fight the Romans, but they're going to lose. And then it begins more like the prideful or wicked. These you should turn the other cheek and not be a soldier. You should endure. You should pick up the cross. You should submit to the government. It's and Nietzsche's saying that there's kind of like this collective consciousness of a nation or a people that is kind of like their God, kind of. The archetype of the God they make of the nation is like a representation of the nation and the people. And when I do think that there's higher trait narcissism in a lot of the Jewish banking families. I do, and I think that we're the chosen people. It's all centered around us. It's all, we're the chosen of the chosen, and we have souls they don't. I think this is coming from a place of narcissism, and I think it's reflecting in that you have a God, the whole universe is created, even if most must burn forever, is so that they can be worshipped. It's why would you? I don't even, like, I'm not wanting to burn in hell for all of eternity. You know what I'm saying? I'm not wanting to lead people astray so that they burn in hell. I'm not wanting to piss off like the greatest powers in the world that can create a whole entire universe with their words. I'm not wanting to slander an entity if he's like perfectly good, justified, and whatever. And you can make the argument that if God made everything with his words, everything's his property and he can really do whatever he wants with it, whether we like it or not. But I don't really, it's like, so like, according to my beliefs at the time when I'm like, when I've just graduated high school and everything, there's a lot of people I love that are going to burn in hell for all of eternity. And it was sort of hard for me to like, how do you, like, first of all, how is that even just that someone could deserve to be punished forever, that like the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? If someone hasn't burnt someone for eternity, how do they deserve to be burnt for eternity? So it's like, first of all, I don't know of anyone that's ever in history just like burnt somebody for a lifetime. So how do they deserve to be burnt for more than a lifetime, for eternity? It just doesn't seem really just to me. But like, the universe isn't mine. I didn't make it. Because thank you, Gold Dust Woman. How old are you? Yes, I am. I don't know. I think I'm about to be 30. I was born August the 20th, 1987, in the morning at Grady Hospital in Atlanta, and I didn't want to cry. They was like spanking me. I didn't cry. They had to like suction my lungs and all. I was turning them. I didn't believe in anyone. I don't believe in anyone being burnt in hell for all eternity. Yeah, I don't think it would be good at all. I don't think it's uh and like you see, there's this when I express doubts about certain things, and the first thing that I'm told is that I am wanting to sin more. That's why I'm wanting to doubt this, so that I can have the freedom to sin more. But it turned out that believing it, not believing it, doubting it, whatever, it didn't make me want to go do anything different, really. I will say for a second there, I probably did, get a little looser with my sexual morals, but then it wasn't fulfilling and I got back on the same track. But like really, I didn't say, okay, now I want to go kill people. Now I want to go steal stuff. Now I pretty much had, because there's certain basic rules and laws that are just, when you take into account human nature, there's certain rules that you have to have a cohesive society that flourishes and does well to begin with. So you're going to find those rules in every culture, no matter what religion they have. They're going to outlaw murder. They're going to outlaw theft. They're going to outlaw adultery, because none of those things are beneficial. None of those things are going to help you have a strong nation. None of those things in any way are going to make you have a cohesive society. So they're going to get rid of those things, and they should. Your species ain't going to do too good if they're killing each other all the time. You're going to waste effort and labor if you're just stealing from each other instead of acquiring more. So, and there's more rules than that. Like you know we know that it's good to be honest and not to bear false witness in court. So like they were saying, it is though. It seems to be extremely absurd to me if everything was to just, like, everything come about for no reason. There'd be no purpose for anything. And I mean, maybe that is the way it is, but it's just very, I don't know. Maybe it's because I started off with a worldview that pretty much held till I was 30. And I will say there are things that I am still, like when I saw Damascus being destroyed, and I know if you give enough years, it'll eventually happen. But I remembered a prophecy about that when I heard him at the World Economic Forum talking about these chips where everybody's money will be on it. Yeah, I can't help but think about the mark of the beast. And then there's sometimes with prophecy, certain things in Daniel about the rise of different nations and how they rose. Like it makes me wonder. But I wonder this though. What if there is a God? But what if most of the time, everything in the Bible, every time someone said God told them this, God told them that, it was either their imagination or the devil. And like a lot of it was never God. Like a lot of it was people saying God said something that God just never said. Like maybe God never said go kill every man, woman, and child. Maybe God never said it was okay to go enslave people. Maybe God never said go kill your son Isaac. You know, maybe there is a God that created the universe and cares about us and guides and watches over people, but maybe people like, and you'll always hear more people telling you God said this or that than you'll ever hear God just coming to you and telling you something. It seems like, so I kind of wonder, right, if, how you have a bunch of different cells in your body, but they're all in harmony, you're one being. And where you make power decisions for the collective of all of the cells in your body, you have awareness of that, where you've got to make a decision for it. And I wonder if all living things, every human, bacteria, deer, blade of grass, on this planet or on any other planets that it might be, if all living things together are cells in another body that is God. Like, You have a overarching mind that's a dimension of reality and of the universe, where that mind knows what every other mind knows. That consciousness feels what every other consciousness feels, and there is this dimension of reality that's consciousness, that's mindfulness, that's life, that is the force of life and why there's life. I don't know any of these things. I wish that we can know these things. I wish you could like die and see what's on the other side and come back. I wish you could see everything that. I mean, to me it seems kind of absurd that we're able to know and be aware of so much, and then our lives are so temporary, and then it's frustrating that nobody really knows. Like nobody really knows. Like people can be. This is another thing I started to learn. I started to take note of. It's just like everybody of every different religion or political ideology will be able to tell you that they know for sure in their heart that they're right. So, and they can't all be right because their beliefs contradict each other. So then you know something about human psychology, that a human can have this conviction and really believe with all of their heart that what they're saying is true and it still be wrong. And so it seems kind of unfair that you have like that if the stakes are so high that you would burn forever. It seems kind of unfair that you're going to be randomly kind of born in one religion or the other. You've only got a lifetime to figure out which one's right. And you've got to bet your soul on it. It seems kind of like, whoa. Like, because people will say this. They'll do I forget, it's called Pascal's wager or something. They'll say, well, it's worth it to just go ahead and believe in Jesus, because if you don't, if you believe, you go to heaven. If you don't believe, you're going to go to hell. If it turned out that it was just the Big Bang and there was no God, then it's not going to matter, right? But then you could do the same wager for the religion of the Vikings and say, well, if you don't honor the gods of Odin and all this, then you're not going to, or you could do it with the Greek religion or Islam. You say, well, Allah said that he can't have a son, and you're saying that Jesus is a son, so it's like you pick the wrong religion, so you go to hell. So you can like take the Pascal wager and add more dimensions to it. And then you say, well, it's not really like you can just either believe or not believe, because then you also, by believing, could have believed the wrong thing and be wrong on the other side. So it's not really a safe bet. So it's, well, maybe which is what? The grind. I do think that though. I think that like when I get older and tired, that is something that, yeah, you do get a rest. You do get to finally sleep, huh? You got to work. You're going to work every day, every week, over and over and over and over again. Always have some responsibility or something that needs your attention, and so death in a way is like a rest. I see. That's what I'm saying. It's freaking. Well, I would say this though. About the Christianity. I know that the tithe is like a tradition amongst evangelicals and amongst Catholics and everything. But in true Christianity, you don't really have tithe. Now, I know Jesus said that they were in the right to pay their tithe, but he was saying their hearts should be clean. But this is when the temple still existed before it was destroyed in 70 AD, and you had the Levites. Now, if you go back to the Old Testament about what tithe is, it's not just giving 10% to the church. There is one of the tribes, the Levites, that aren't allowed to own. They don't own farms and property like that. They manage the temple. They chop the wood. They make the sacrifices. They manage the animals. They repair the building. They're the priests. The family is all about providing that temple service for the rest of the population. And so they take their tithe at certain times of the year, 10%, and they go eat it with the Levites. And the Levites do get to keep and store and have some for their family and everything else. But they were getting to eat part of their 10% with the Levites, not just giving it all the way to the Levites. And it was to maintain the Levites. But that priesthood is gone. It completely died off and was replaced with the Edomites. You had the only one that could have maybe continued it was Jesus, being of the Levites and the tribe of Judah. But what I'm getting to is, in the New Testament, it says that no one should be felt to give under compulsion. And when they're telling people you have to give 10%, that's out of compulsion. The tithe was to maintain the Levites because they weren't given a land allotment. The church is told, if you don't work, you don't eat. And the Apostle Paul said he was a tent maker, he worked too. So really, they're twisting Scripture. It's supposed to be free of will, and you could give or not, but this idea that tithe is like a sacrament that continued after the new covenant and is to be continued is a complete fraudulent scam. The temple's gone, y'all. The Levite priesthood ain't there. There ain't no having to give 10%. But that's a good way to make money and not work, which has been what the priesthood class and all religions have mostly been about. Like, why do we gotta offer cooked steak? Because the priests like the taste of steak. They like goats and steaks, and they like cows and chickens, and it's more than. But yeah, a lot of it is money and control, and most people are sort of selective about applying their religious laws. And they're sort of more loose on applying it to themselves than others. You can, and it's got a lot more force behind it to say God said it than I said it. Like if I say, I don't like the way you're living and I think you should live like I live to validate the way I'm living, that just doesn't really carry the same force of weight as God said, do this or you'll burn forever. And if you do it, you'll go to heaven forever. So the reward and the punishment is greater than life or death. And then the risk of not believing is greater than life. It's like risk burning in hell forever. And it's easier to get people to, I think a big reason for the afterlife being pushed eternally and with this is war. Like, the Vikings did it. The Islam done it. Christianity done it. The Greeks done it. A lot of people, because if you're wanting someone to give up their life, they're not going to want to just give up their life. But if giving up their life is attached to an eternal reward, or not giving it up is attached to an eternal punishment, it's easier to get people to expend their life in war. And so I think a lot of, I know, people say that technically Yahweh was not a war god in the Old Testament, but, he kind of was during the days of Moses and Joshua. A lot of his miracles were associated to winning victories in battle. And I guess but to be fair, I guess the afterlife is begins to be developed later on. It's Jesus Christ that comes out and says the fire is never quenched and the worm never dies. And the smoke of their torment arises before the angels forever, so there is talk of the afterlife in the Old Testament. But I don't know that there's really the same eternal punishment. I think there is some. See, there's a verse. I'm trying to remember if it's in Zechariah. I know there's this one where it talks about. I'm not going to. Well, it talks about the enemies being turned like ashes and traded under the foot of like oxen. There's like. There's like the punishment for sin is death, but then there's the eternal life. But the whole eternal death thing. If you heard of the cult, the Seventh-day Adventist, they tried to sort of do a Christianity reboot with hell being temporary instead of eternal. And they used a lot of Old Testament prophecies to try to make this a case, but I don't know how you get around the Greek in Revelation. I know that some try to argue, well, the hellfire is eternal, but your time in it is not. The Catholics, they took a lot of wealth from the Germanic people when they were building St. Peter's Cathedral by coming up with this whole new thing about purgatory, coming up with this new thing about you could pay your way out of, you could like pay your family members' way out of purgatory so they don't have to be punished as long for their sins before they can go to heaven. And they were selling this. So people were like, hey, if you love your family, go, pay their way out of purgatory into heaven. And from that money, they took the gold from the Germanic peoples and built St. Peter's Cathedral. And that's kind of wild, really. And they definitely did it. They're definitely guilty of it. And I think they might even come out and apologize later and was like, "Our bad. That wasn't." Because I know they don't sell them anymore. They don't sell indulgences anymore, but they used to. It was a problem from the very beginning. The Apostle Paul wrote that many had abandoned the faith, seeing it as a means to gain riches. And he was saying that there were plenty of people who didn't even believe it, but they had seen preaching it as a way to get attention or riches, to be the center of attention, the big wheel. Or no, I think when I said the big, I think I'm starting to mix something John said with something Paul said. I used to read it every day and cycle back over the Bible again and again. It's more fresh in my mind. But my memory of it is attached more to like the paper copy. Like if you put a Bible in my hand, I can turn to it. I'll remember it. I'll go to it. It's different with me looking it up on a computer, which with the computer I can use keywords and I can find it like that too. But a lot of the memory of me reading the Bible when it's in my hands, I can flip to here's this prophecy, here's this, here's that. I spent a lot of my life learning it, and then I kind of felt like maybe I had wasted a lot of my life to learn and follow rules that nobody else was playing by. So it seemed like I was at an unfair advantage. And I was at a time of feeling like powerless, I think, when I started to read Nietzsche. And I started reading him not as, like, I started reading him with the mind to be against him. And I was like, hey, he's making some points here, some good points here and there. Muscle memory. I guess it's also, and I'm nearsighted, but that helps me read fast. My eyes are sighted in for that distance really well. I'm thirsty. I'm gonna pour me some tea. I'm not going far. I'm just going. I just about drunk it all. Wait, I got coffee right behind me. I forgot about that. I got tea. No, I got coffee. I got something to drink over here. What country are you in, Gold Dust Woman? And what's the Gold Dust? Do you pan for gold? I'm on Ohio. There's some Amish in Ohio. Ohio. It's like, I think it's kind of like, it's a Fleetwood Mac song. I don't know if I've heard it. I know they've got about breaking the chains. Yeah. I got music playing in my head. Athens, Ohio. We got an Athens in Georgia too. They got one in Greece too. Isn't Ohio like a lot of grains? Like, I don't know, corn, wheat, things like that. It's a little college town. How many traffic lights you got in your town? Not many. In Alamo, Georgia, we got one. And in Glenwood, we got one. McRae's got a few of them, though. I'll have to count and let you know when I see a stream again. There was some Amish people going to come to Wheeler County and build a few barns, but they needed to be able to come out here. They needed 3 jobs, and they only had I think 2 of them. So they wound up. I was gonna almost got a pole barn real cheap. I'm a construction worker right now for All Pro Seamless Gutters and more. Garage doors, roll-up door. I work for the crew that does screen rooms, garage doors, roll-up doors, and insulating the walls of houses with batts insulation and sucking out old insulation in attics and blowing in new insulation, fiberglass insulation. Before that, I worked for J&K Creations, making memorial flowers, but really just scooping lots and lots and lots of concrete. And then before that, I was working for Cherokee Landscape Supply. And then before that, I was working at Piglet, a little grocery store that went out of business in Alamo. I don't know why. I ain't gonna get into that right now. Before that, I was working at Husqvarna, making lawnmowers and snow blowers and, just tillers. And then before Husqvarna, I was working at Piggly Wiggly and doing various electrical side jobs and stuff. And before that, I was working at Kroger. And before that, I was working at Warbington Egg Farm, a factory egg farm, a big old egg farm. And then what I'm always doing on the side, I'm a hunter, fisher, farmer. I keep a garden. I have honeybees, I have chickens, and I've had a few other jobs that I'm just not going to mention, I don't think. But now I'm pretty much just a small farmer and I believe they started in Ohio. I think I remember in one of the meetings we had, they were telling us the history of Kroger and how they were one of the first grocery stores or first real grocery store that started in the Ohio River Valley and spread out, back, I think. Oh, man, for a second, I almost remember the store number. I was in Dawsonville then, where 53 crosses 400. There's a Kroger there. That's where I used to work. Georgia has a few Krogers. They've got one in Dublin. They've got one in Dawsonville. They've got a few here and there. And they're really better grocery stores than most of our other grocery stores. But I don't really live close enough to a Kroger to go to a Kroger. When I lived in Dawsonville, I did. But I don't know. Is there a Kroger in Dublin maybe is the closest one? I don't know. I would go to Piggly Wiggly in McRae if I had to go to the grocery store. A lot of people like to go to Harvey's, but I'd rather go to Piggly Wiggly. Part of it's probably because I used to work there when I was 21, maybe 22. I think I worked there a year, and then I went to Husqvarna to make more money and to just get away. I had a crush on, I don't even know, Brittany gonna watch this and get mad for no reason, but I had a crush on somebody when I worked at Piggly Wiggly, and she didn't like me, and I got tired of working around her. So that's a big part of why I just went over to Husqvarna. But Husqvarna to me was fun, and most people hated it. They're out of business now, or they're not out of business, but the one that was in McRae shut down. It used to employ a lot of people. People would come from Eastman, and people would come from places all over to go work there. And Yep. And they went out of business, but a lot of people hated it because it's repetitious, but I loved it. I love those power tools on the working off air compressors. Just easy to change sockets and everything. But I was the kind of guy people wouldn't really, a lot of people wouldn't like, because I was there trying to make the most lawnmowers we could possibly make. I was there trying to, I was like, we beat the record? Awesome. And then the next day I was like, I'm going to beat that record. And they're like, don't you see? It's a scam. If we meet production, they just raise production. Slow down. I would start trying to, like, I'd compete against myself. And they would turn two jobs into one. They're like, he's fast enough. He could be doing this and this. They combine the job. And I got promoted to utility. But I don't know if I want to tell this story. There were various reasons why I stopped working at Husqvarna. I had seen a few movies when I was a teenager that were bad influences on me, maybe. And I was young, so I was stupid. Or maybe not stupid, but yeah, maybe. I was lucky enough to get away with it, though. But I thought I was smart when I was lucky. You know what I'm thinking about? One, I gotta be honest, I have not read the YouTube Terms of Agreements. And I probably need to read those before I just say any and everything on YouTube like I do. Because I really don't know what I'm allowed to say. I almost had a hatchet put in my liver before. I've had 2 loaded guns put in my head before. I'm pretty lucky. I'm pretty lucky and I'm pretty hard to kill. And I don't think I've done anything particularly to deserve it. It's just maybe early in life I had the bad luck and now it's just got to even out. And now it's just got to be good. It's just got to work out. One time I am blessed. That's the thing too, that I just feel like I owe someone gratitude for life. I am grateful to be alive. I do like life. I do think that it's a very beautiful. I think life is beautiful with its pains and pleasures and challenges and ups and downs and tragedies. And I've said this. I know I've already said this on a bunch of live streams, but I'll say it again. If everything was good and perfect and easy, what kind of story would you ever tell? If you had no bad guys, everybody's a good guy. Everything works out. Everything's easy. Everything's pleasurable. What kind of story can you tell? What kind of purpose can you have? Like you come home and you're like, what happened? Well, everything worked out. There's no drama. And I think it's like we don't want there to be any bad or pain in the universe, but at the same time, we don't want to be bored. So there's no way for God to win, really. He can't really create like something that we can just be like, yeah, that's awesome. You know, we're like, well, fucking rattlesnake bit me. You didn't have to make a rattlesnake, did you? You know, but then you don't have you're a Leo, so maybe you have 9 lives. You know, when I was, my granddaddy, I don't know what year it was, but it was an old Chevrolet truck where you've got if you're in the bed of the truck, you see the place where the tires are, like the tire it's, and the outside of it. It's an older Chevrolet. It's like back when they made trucks more like aesthetically pleasing to look at. I'm about to knock the phone over. Let me His old truck. Anyway, I was riding it with him in the truck, and it was almost like I saw a dream while I was awake. But it was almost, but I didn't think of it like that I was imagining it. I thought of it that I was remembering it, and it seemed like I had remembered um, being in a place with a lot of light and looking at Earth where it was dark and seeing like little spots of light in there, and and wanting to go there. But then, like I don't think the maths very well with reincarnation. With like, and then I was walking in the woods, and I was walking in the woods in Dawsonville, and in the story of my family, they come from New York to Wheeler County, Georgia. I mean, from Ireland, but they almost settled where my dad lives now. They almost bought property that would have been lakefront on Lake Lanier, so it would have been very valuable. But they didn't. They kept coming down, and then later, Daddy went up there. But so I was in the woods behind his house at 128 Valley Brook Circle West, and there was like a hill, and I was just like walking up the hill, and I just sort of sensed that I would find something at the top of the hill. And I go to the top of the hill, and there's like trees growing in the hill, and there's leaves all at the top of the hill, and I start moving the leaves aside, and I find a circle of rocks. Somebody had carried those rocks up at the top of the hill and put them in a circle. They weren't just like naturally there. And it was weird because it was like I'd never been there before, but I felt like I was living a memory. And I go up there and I find where probably somebody built a fire up on top of that hill. And it was just sort of a weird deja vu, like the strongest deja vu in my life. And there was another place in the woods I got a really creepy feeling about that was like a U, like it was like a dented in the ground, but there was like a U-shaped hill. So it's like you could be in the middle of the hill and nobody see you from the sides unless they walked up on you. And I just had this feeling that something bad happened there. I feel a little like a kind of like a certain feeling talking about it. But I count on how many near-death experiences you've had to know how many I got left. Well, when I was a boy, I don't even know if I was in kindergarten yet. I think I was probably 4. My mama had this big old cup that she'd keep her Diet Coke in. And she was on the porch at my granddaddy's house. Daddy and her and granny and granddaddy and uncles and stuff, well, they was on the porch talking. And Mama and Granddaddy Browning had their legs dangling off the front of the porch. They had to move in time for the car not to hit them. But my mama's cup had fell out and rolled under a Toyota Tercel. And my brother Josh was playing in the front seat. And I was crawling up under the car to get the cup that had rolled, like there's like a heel and it rolled up under there. And I was going to get Mama's cup. And Josh put the car in neutral and it rolled forward and rolled over my back. And it hurt, and I couldn't walk, and then I just could. Like, I was laying there hurting and everything, and then, like, a bunch of people was praying for me and stuff. And then my back hurt, but I could walk again. I don't know if maybe the pain was too much, so I didn't try to walk. I don't know. So, I almost died there. That's one. Almost getting run over. The gun to my head might have been one because after I was robbed and I was leaving, I was mad about it and opened my truck and get out the custom van, which, I mean, that was kind of dumb. I really wish I would. I don't think he would have really shot me. I wish I would have just drove off. I was just afraid he'd put a bullet hole in the truck and then be the police get called. But maybe that's 2. There's probably a few before. Maybe when the roll-up door cut my wrist open. Maybe that was the one. Maybe when the other roll-up curtain cut this open. I don't know. I was able to hold that pretty well closed together. Maybe when the butcher knife went in the hand. I don't know. Maybe when I was given Xanax and alcohol and something else, and I pass out about to fall asleep, and I just get feeling to open up my eyes and grab that hatchet with my left hand before it goes in my liver. I don't know. I might be almost out, y'all. I don't know how many I got. I don't really. If you get 9, I haven't been counting. Let's see. Got two different instances with guns, one with a hatchet, one with a butcher knife, two with curtains. I tell you, my Uncle Robbie, he's dead now. But he used up one. He shot like we were seeing how many 2x4s if we spaced them a certain way, a 22 bullet would go through, and the wind blew one of the 2x4s up against another like this, and the bullet ricocheted back and hit my Uncle Robbie in the chest. He kept that bullet. He'd give that bullet to me. I used to have it where I could show it. I don't know where it is now, and he was a big man. He was tall. He was like, I don't know how tall he was, but I know he's more than 6'2". He's more than 6'2" and a half because that's how tall my dad is. And he's a good bit tall. Like he had to bend his head not to hit the ceiling fan and come in the door frame. My mama's only 5 foot tall. Sounds like less than. Yeah, so I got a few more then, huh? Well, also there's before the car. There's when I was born and wasn't breathing. I don't know. I don't know what to count and not to count. I wouldn't say it was a near death experience. It was just a risky situation. Some risky situations. There was a time in my life where most of my actions and all was trying to achieve a certain goal. And it got to where that goal had just become impossible. And I sort of like didn't, like I lost my sense of purpose and meaning. And and I was single and alone. And I was making a lot of bad decisions, mostly to not be bored. Almost it was like the central, like I would do all kind of things. And I had good stories to tell people. But people was crazy. They couldn't understand why I was living life the way I was living it and why I was doing the things I was doing. And the short answer was to not be bored. And that wasn't really healthy. And I was also, and at the tail end of that, when I guess I got my feel of the crazy life, I was in a toxic relationship that didn't really make sense to be in, except that it was just it got to a point where I knew there was nothing healthy about it, but it was just to not be bored. It's not. You gotta have something to do. Me, I gotta have enough of something to do. Google banned me for a month one time. Do you know how hard it is to use almost any app on an Android phone when Google has banned you? I couldn't even search Google. I could not use Google or anything with Google because I just kept saying too much. And I think they just let me know they could do it. Yeah, it happened. It did. It was frustrating too. And I was like, I got back on when Google let me use Google again. I was good for a little while. I didn't want to be, but I mean, not that I was bad, but I was just like careful about what I said. I was like, dang, it is so inconvenient to not be able to use Google. My safe passwords are in Google. My email's in Google, Like YouTube is owned by Google. A lot of your apps on your phone are tied to Google. There's a lot you cannot do if Google says you cannot use their service. And they never told me a reason why. But your phone listens to you. And I got this idea to go tell some combat veterans about how Israel sunk the USS Liberty. And I referred to Google as Jugal. And that banned me for a month. that got me banned for a month. And that's been since I worked at J&K. So that's probably been over 2 years ago. It's probably been like 2, 3, 4 years. Somewhere in there is when it happened. If I really was to think about it, I could come up with enough things to pinpoint what year it was. Because it was after COVID. And I kept saying stuff about that too. I really hate how they say you're spreading false information, and then later they admit that you were telling the truth the whole time. It's just the audacity. They really have a lot of audacity. Because and they really have a lot of audacity, like a lot, because they will blacklist and they'll be like, Marlon Brando, how dare you say we control Hollywood? Now you can't work in Hollywood. And then they'll have somebody at the same time, they'll have a Jew come out and say, yeah, we control it. Like, and they've done that in modern times with Kanye. They had, is it Jimmy Fallon or whatever? It's like, yeah, we control it because we're good at it, you know? So it's like they say it, and they say it's true. But if you say it, it's a lie, it's a slander, how dare you? But then at the same time, they will tell you that is true, and it's a matter of public record. You could look up who owns what, all the way to BlackRock. So it's just really insane. It's really insane. But I did notice this, and they let you say things they weren't letting you say, and it's coming at about the same time that they're pushing to pass this anti-Semitic, this bill that can fine and punish people with prison time for things they say. Totally un-American. But at the same time that they're trying to push that through is when I've noticed that all the Jewish on social media is relaxed and let people talk about it again, probably to give us enough rope to hang ourselves. But whatever. I'm not going to just not say it. I would have said it less if they wouldn't have got on to it. Like, I don't know. It's just like, so Google bans me, and so then I'm quiet for a while, but then I'm like, wait, I'm right. Like, they wouldn't ban me just for, which I don't know. I don't know if that really should reinforce my worldview because I got banned, but it kind of did have that effect. And it really worked kind of again. Because, see, I had friends telling me I was crazy for years, but when I got banned from Google, I just started talking to people face to face. And I seem to be more persuasive that way than by ranting on Facebook. That's probably why we're all on Facebook. I'll be back. I got to go pee. Is anybody still here? Oh, you're still here. Thank you. I thought about something. Okay, so I was talking about where I started having doubts in my 30s. Oh, you're going to bed? All right. Well, good night. Have a, and if you have a channel, I'll subscribe to you too. Cool Dust Woman. All right. But I was going to talk. It's like we had two chromosomes fused. I'll make another video. My channel's all disorganized, but one day I'm gonna try to get it organized. Somebody said there's a way to make multiple YouTubes, link them together, and then you can have different folders for different types of videos. If you have a good night, I'm not gonna keep you up because you gotta go to sleep. Really, I should go to sleep. I gotta get up at like 6:20 or 6:30.